Good morning, everybody. It's Friday, March 24th. Matt Bennett, good morning. Happy Friday.
Morning, Joe. How are you doing?
Doing good. Ready for the weekend. I'm going to start with this story regarding Russia and the potential halt of wheat exports. This at face value, this was out like 4 hours ago. At face value, this could be incredibly bullish, the wheat market, but there's probably more to it than that.
Yeah, I'm assuming that there's more to it than that. It's been interesting to see kind of how Russia has handled their business here with
Yeah.
this whole situation since they've been in the conflict with Ukraine. But essentially, they were putting everything on a fire sale for a while, whether you're talking oil, wheat, you name it. And now all of a sudden, it's like, hey, maybe we're a little too cheap type situation. So I want to get more info on it, but I'm with you. If they did decide to do something formally here, I could see this giving a major shot in the arm to this wheat market.
This could be just propaganda. I don't know. So this is Reuters, but they're citing a Russian business publication of some sort who cited two unidentified sources who apparently attended a government meeting. So this is a
Mhm.
lot of hearsay. If this were realized, I mean, the implication could be tremendous. Russia's a quarter of all wheat exports in the
Yeah.
entire world. I mean, they are the wheat exporter. They are the global price setter when it comes to wheat. The reason that we can't export wheat out of the United States is because Russia's wheat is so darn cheap. I mean, that's the problem. So we don't know much here this morning, but that was the first story that caught my eye. Could this be Putin, like, or Russia trying to use food as leverage for negotiation again, like kind of similar to the grain deal, but now with his own stuff? Does that
I
make
mean,
any sense?
that would be my thought process. It'd be the third. It'd be the first thought process. But
Yeah.
I mean, you just never know what they're going to do. This has been a complicated war, and on a lot of different fronts. Probably the first time that we've seen the war, I guess, transpire the way that it has. I
Yeah.
mean, it's just been complicated because look at what they've done with exports. You've got, hey, all of a sudden we're going to bomb the crap out of you guys, and then turn around tomorrow and let's put this export agreement together so we can all ship stuff out of the region. It's like, who wants to go in there and pick up a cargo load of wheat? I mean, don't sign me up, but. I don't know. It's just been an interesting war.
I know a lot of people believe that the war will escalate when spring, summer rolls around. When it starts to get warmer, you see warmer temperatures. A lot of people are calling for a lot of different things in terms of escalation. So this food as leverage thing when it comes to not only the Black Sea grain deal, but now also it appears Russia's own supplies. This is all interesting stuff. Let's go to the soybean market, which sucks this week. We made some fresh lows in the May contract, also in new crop futures. Your nearby May 23 soybean contract has lost $1.30 per bushel from its February 22nd high to yesterday's low. The Nove contract has acted even worse, lost $1.44 per bushel from February 22nd to yesterday's close. What the hell is going on here?
Massive liquidation. You
Yeah,
saw the whenever the corn market broke some of your moving averages. You broke your final moving average there, in late February, 22nd, somewhere in there, and then it was just straight down for a little bit. And we said, you know what, the bean market can go the same way, the corn market at some point. And so,
yeah.
that's essentially, in my opinion, the funds that were awfully long. We got that commitment of traders report. Finally found out what happened the last week of February, 150,000 drop on corn. You got to think the funds are sitting there looking, holy cow, we're short corn now. Do we want to be this long beans in this situation? Well, personally, like I told you a couple days ago, I'm having a hard time staying bearish. But no beans, 13 straight sessions lower. I mean,
Yeah,
that's just an incredible run. I
it
mean,
is.
talk about a nasty looking chart, but you've got to think you're going to find support somewhere in here, especially whenever you look at the way global supplies are changing around.
So the scary thing is that in this market in soybeans, the private groups at yesterday's close estimated that funds were still long 90,000 contracts of beans. So if they want to sell more, they've got more to sell. On the fundamental side, there are a few stories floating around. Big Brazilian harvest, of course. That's not a surprise. There's apparently some weakness in the Brazilian cash market, which should also not be a surprise. It's harvest season. I've heard some rumors suggesting that some Brazilian soybeans could make their way to the United States. I'm not sure that the economics of that make any sense, but this is a scary looking deal, and it happens so fast. That's the thing about it. It happens so fast.
Right. I mean, yesterday I heard supposedly 3 cargoes into Purdue Farms. Who
Hmm.
knows if that's true? I'm with you. I'm having a hard time getting my pencil to make that work just yet. But at the same time, what we all need to remember again is that whenever you stay that elevated for that long, you're always subject to some sort of a sell-off. And it's not necessarily that it's this huge fundamental story all the time. It's that the funds are looking at their portfolio and saying, what's the chance that we're going to have good return on investment on this bean price at $15? And I think that some of those conversations went on, and these guys said, "Screw this, we're going to hop out for the time being, see what happens." I mean, don't expect that they're just going to stay out forever. I think that they will be back, especially once again with balance sheets the way they are.
I think there are a lot of headwinds when it comes to like a long commodity position. I mean, commodity markets as a whole, as we've discussed at length, have been in bear market territory for a while. Pull up the Goldman Index, pull up the Bloomberg Index. They're all in bear market territory. There are very few commodities that are acting really well right now. I mean, like you've got your golds and your silvers of the world. Outside of that, most of this stuff is really backed off. Let's get into some good news. Corn export sales were really good last week, marketing year high. What was the number? 3.095 million metric tons. That's 122 million bushels of corn in 1 week. That was the best single week sale for a current marketing year since spring of 2021. And China accounted for 73% of that weekly total, largely due to those flash sales last week. So excellent week of corn sales. Is China done?
No, I don't believe they are. I mean, what we're hearing as far as the folks that we talk to, are saying that it's somewhere between 4 and 6 million tons. I mean, I'm not
Yeah.
telling you that that's the number. That's just what we're hearing. And so, if that's the case, I mean, you've got to think. Yesterday, spreads looked like maybe they were going to start backing off a little bit, and then you come in here this morning, and spreads are still working somewhat. So that tells me, I think that there's still that demand there. It's going to be interesting. River basis really hadn't backed off. And so my thought process is that you're still going to get more sales. I don't know what the timing of those will be like, but we've seen 7 out of 8 days. That's just not something you see very often. And obviously, it's done a lot to prop this corn market up.
We had another corn sale to China just yesterday, not a huge one, about 5 million bushels. A lot of people have asked about like the export pace and where we stand. Here's corn export sales. If you guys are watching, accumulated the last 3 years, we're still 34% below last year in terms of total commitments. So we're still way behind, but we're closing the gap a little bit because that number was like 40% plus or almost 50% as of just a few weeks ago. And USDA has reduced its projections in terms of corn exports on the balance sheets. So we're now at a point, given these big Chinese purchases, that we could meet or maybe even exceed that USDA projection, depending on what happens with sales here, the next several weeks.
Right, absolutely. I mean, I talked about this a little bit, probably 3 weeks ago. I don't even know who was interviewing me. I just said I think the USDA is going to drop March exports, but I also think they're going to have to go back up at some point. We felt pretty strongly China would be coming in and buying corn, but to be honest with you, going out and saying that in public isn't always the best thing. Obviously, people scratch their heads. How do you know what you're talking about? We just felt like, due to the fact that it sure seems like they're using more corn than what they're producing. I mean, this is like 6th year in a row we're showing that it's a pretty decent amount of difference. They want security. There's no question. And so,
Yeah.
can they hold out till Safrine? I mean, they saw what happened in South America this year with the Argentine crop, and I think they're just hedging their bets. I mean, I think they're going to buy a lot of corn off of Brazil too. I don't know what the total purchases will be, but I feel pretty strongly that China's not done here, and they're probably going to buy even more corn off Brazil than what they did off of us.
Here's kind of an off the wall question for you, and I've had this question or comment come in from a whole bunch of people. Okay, so you've got Russia talking food security and potentially halting exports. You've got China coming in and buying corn. The question that I've had from a bunch of people is like, are they preparing for some sort of bigger escalation in terms of a war? Is China hoarding food because they're preparing for a Taiwan invasion? Is Russia starting to hoard food because they're preparing for a bigger escalation in the Black Sea? I mean, has that crossed your mind?
I'd be lying if I said it didn't. I
Yeah.
do think that that's way above my pay grade, but
Yeah, me too.
at the same time, absolutely, it's crossed my mind. I mean, you can't underestimate if someone really is preparing for something that most of us think is a heinous situation. They're not going to go out there and say, "Hey, guess what? 3 Tuesdays from now, we're going to launch an offensive," and so we're
Right.
trying to do everything we can to prepare. No, I think you got to watch for subtle hints and signs, and there's no doubt that they're going to want to have as much stuff on hand as possible. And obviously grain is some of their economic or food security, if you will. So I do think that's a very decent possibility. But again, who knows?
We have some new acreage estimates from your group, agmarket.net, out just yesterday. You guys have U.S. corn acreage estimated at 91.35 million. You've got soybeans at 87.9, all wheat at 49.12. How did you guys arrive at these numbers? What's your logic here?
Yeah, I mean, basically a lot of conversations, first of all. I mean, one thing, whenever I stopped and kind of put my thought process together, is that last year was a big soybean year. Okay. Last year, obviously, very, very dry. I think a lot of folks, especially in the West, maybe didn't plant as much corn as what they typically might with strong markets due to the environment, due to Mother Nature. And so you come in here last year, big bean acres. This year, I think that could transcend to definitely more corn acres. Now, some folks for a while we're talking 93, 94. I don't think that would happen. Why? Because input prices were so strong. So I feel like corn wins the battle this year, but is it going to do so in overwhelming fashion? That's pretty tough to say whenever you had $14 November beans forever. And so I don't know, 87.9, pretty fair assumption for me as far as soybeans are concerned. But Joe, one thing I'll say is that this is my best estimate in my group. I mean, we came to this as collectively. This is our best estimate of what is going to happen next Friday. And so the bottom line is, as you know, a lot could happen between now and, for instance, June 30th. But as far as planting intentions go, I do think producers' intentions are to plant more corn this year. And of course, we intentions are pretty strong. There'll be a big story there on abandonment, though, if Kansas can end up healing up. I've got to think there could be some abandonment there.
We're going to talk about those two things right now. So first off, let's in regard to U.S. production prospects, let's go back and talk about this story up north. I continue to hear comments from farmers in places like Minnesota, South Dakota, and North Dakota in particular. Joe, it's going to be a late spring. There's going to be prevent plant. There's going to be acreage switching. It's getting later, and the forecast doesn't really look that good for a lot of these areas where you've got a lot of snow cover. I mean, you're talking temperatures in the 20s and 30s out through the first week of April is the way that it looks. Do you subscribe to the idea that there's going to be a whole bunch of issues up here, or is it too early to say that?
I believe I told you this the other day, but I was just up in Minnesota last week, and I'm here to tell you there was a lot of snow cover where
Yeah,
I was
yeah,
at.
absolutely.
The southern border of Minnesota, there's snow, okay, but you start getting north, like, oh, I don't know, 60, 80 miles, and all of a sudden you run into 1.5 feet, 2 feet of snow on the ground.
Hmm.
And again, like you say, that in and of itself, this time of year, isn't always going to scare someone. The problem is the 2 week forecast. The problem is, Snodgrass is saying he's not so sure that we're going to see much planting at all in the Midwest, at least in early April, and it could hold on, through the whole month of April. And so, I've got to at least lend credence to the fact that some of these folks see that trend developing. And I'll tell you what, last night, Joe, we had rain pretty much all night, and on my short commute in town, water standing absolutely everywhere. I don't know how much rain we had, but I said, oh gosh, I mean, we're at least 2 weeks away from even thinking about it in my part of the world. And I can assure you there'd be beans planted today if the environment was right. So are we going to be looking at some late spring talk? Yeah, but let's come back 3 weeks from now and see where we're at, because, it's pretty early to have that discussion, but I'm with you. It's pretty concerning whenever the forecast is for that much cold temperatures, whenever you've already got all that snow on the ground.
If you guys are watching or listening and give me your thoughts. If you're up north, if you're in Minnesota, you're in North Dakota, you're in South Dakota, you've got the snow on the ground, drop them in the YouTube comments. I'd love to hear what you guys think. Let's jump to the drought, which you also mentioned. So it's improved. I mean, the drought statistics in terms of crop areas experiencing a drought, they've declined drastically, but that's because we had drought in just a few months ago. We had some drought in the central corn belt in the southeast. That's all gone. And now your drought just remains in kind of the same place that it's always been in, your Kansas, your Oklahoma, your Nebraska, Western Corn Belt, up into the Dakotas. I'm not seeing like a ton of relief here for HRW wheat country in particular. I mean, I think this is an issue for the wheat crop at least. I know the market doesn't seem to care.
Yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you wholeheartedly. And the thing is that a lot of folks, I guess, have talked in the weather world that our shift into this neutral INSO is going to provide relief. We're not seeing it yet. forecast really doesn't look all that rosy just yet. I'm not saying that it's going to be a totally different discussion in July, but for the HRW country, you need relief before that. I mean,
Yeah.
you definitely need to see some improvement soon. I mean, coming out of dormancy, in the next few weeks, depending on where you're at as far as the map's concerned, you need to have some moisture. And so I certainly hope some of these folks get it. I mean, a couple of the clients that I've got in that southwest quadrant of Kansas, I mean, those guys haven't seen rain in forever. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
it's going to impact planting decisions. Again, you've got to assure yourself, if you've got to irrigate just to get your crop up and growing, it's going to definitely impact your plans. And so, it could have strong implications, not just from acreage, but from basis again this next year. So it's going to be interesting to see how this weather plays out.
Surprise, surprise, early soybean yields in Argentina are disappointing, although it sounds like they're even more disappointing than what a lot of people had thought. The Buenos Aires Grain Exchange left their production estimate for beans unchanged at 25 million. Keep in mind, USDA is still up at 33. They also left their corn number unchanged, but they cautioned that further cuts to the crop are possible and said that early yields were below historical lows and below the initially expected returns. If this trend continue, it could affect our production estimate of 25 million. So they're talking like 25 million with a downward bias in Argentina. So this may be less than half of a soybean crop.
Right. I mean, the original projection was 51. They went down 8 in March. They go down another 8 in April. And what are they going to do? They're going to raise the imports. And so let's say they go down another 8 to 25 in April. All of a sudden, 16 million tons are going to go from Brazil to Argentina. We pretty much know. I mean, that's where it's going to come from. That means those 16 million tons aren't going somewhere else, right, Joe? So, I mean, that could be a little bit of a boon for the export market here for the U.S., but at the same time, we just don't have a whole lot to export. So that's why I say you got to watch these balance sheets just a little bit. I mean, I'll tell you what, Argentina dropping half a crop, it totally mitigates what's happened in Brazil. I mean, yeah, Brazil's got a big crop, but you know what? What if South American production's status quo? I mean, I don't know. I just don't think that you can take this market and absolutely bludgeon it to death. Yeah, you're going to liquidate for a while, and then I think that you're going to look at a new story, and I think that you'll see some support in here based upon this story.
Cattle market was marginally lower yesterday. Feeder cattle a little bit higher. Cattle's kind of struggled as of late. I still feel as if the fundamentals are pretty good. What are your thoughts?
I feel like the fundamentals are great, but I think we got a little overcooked for the time being. And I think it
Yeah.
was kind of a risk off event. And some folks said, you know what, cattle look rich to me. But over the long haul, again, if the U.S. consumer doesn't back away, if equities hold together, I don't know how you keep it. It'd be like keeping a beach ball underwater. I mean, fundamentally speaking, this cattle market is a pretty dynamic situation. So I'm not saying you go out there and you buy a whole hog. That probably wouldn't be the smart thing to do. But at the same time, it's going to be tough to keep it down.
U.S. dollars higher this morning, guys. The stock market is off ahead of the cash open. S&P's down about 26. Dow Jones down 260. Precious metals are mixed. Crude oil is getting beat up again, down 2.25, 67.71 in the May WTI. That crude market just cannot hold a rally to save its life.
No, it really can. It's going to be interesting to see how energies play out. I mean, I've been telling people keep a close eye on your energy needs for this year because I do think there could be some opportunities in here. But yeah, crude's really struggling.
Matt, have a good weekend, buddy. Thank you for joining me.
Yep, absolutely. You have a good weekend as well.